Off-market accepted offer in Kansas City for a three-bedroom, 1.5 bath, 1,200 square foot for $183,000 US. Estimated monthly rent, 1,500. Cap rate, for those who know commercial real estate, 5.9%. Back in Canada, we have potential for civil unrest, including rent strikes in Canada. And we're going to talk about legal and accounting structures for Canadians owning U.S. rental properties with Carmen De Silva, CPA in both Canada and USA. All this and more on this week's Truth About Real Estate Investing show for Canadians. Greetings, my fellow Canadian investors. My name is Arwen Cito, host of this humble little podcast since 2016, home of over 300 episodes where we speak to Canadian investors about what repeatable successes they have, where they made mistakes, what drives them, so we may learn from their experiences to improve in our own investment portfolios. This past week has been a wild one. My U.S. entities have been created. I applied for so that means I have my LLC in Wyoming. I have my limited partnership in Texas. I've applied for my employment identification number, EIN for short. So that's the unique identifying number that I use to report taxes to the IRS, because I will be paying taxes in the States. I have funds after selling a few houses from our investment portfolio and have been eagerly waiting to buy a house in the U.S. And then this Thursday came by, this past Thursday went by, and I got an email from Dimitri, the CIO of Share. An off-market deal from a wholesaler came available, and we have a conditional sale, and I've ordered a home inspection plus a quote from the property manager. The deal, Kansas City, Missouri, detached three-bedroom house, 1.5 bath, single garage, 1,200 square feet, for a whopping $157,500 plus a $25,000 renovation. That's why I said $183,000 earlier, just rounding up. That's just estimated, still waiting for the quote. Again, the projected rent brings me to a cap rate of 5.9% in a single family house. In my experience, a 5.9% cap rate is extremely hard to come by in Canada, let alone Ontario or BC or Alberta, without significant development and renovations. And what you've heard from many of my past guests, they do some awesome stuff, but it is very active, capital intensive, a lot of effort, a lot more risk than I'm personally willing to bear. I'm looking for boring, not looking for exciting. Plus, also add to the fact I'm investing remotely. Kansas City is probably about a 3-hour flight for me, somewhere around that, maybe 2-3 hours. Anyways, I'm happy to stay in my boring lane and just collect cash flow. But I'm happy for those who are, doing good work out there, doing the investing, doing the exciting investing, active investing, developing, creating that housing supply that we so desperately need in Canada. So some quick, interesting facts about Kansas City, because I didn't know much about Kansas City. Here's some interesting facts. 46% of households are renters in Kansas City. 46%, that's almost half. The Ford F-150, the most popular pickup truck for, I think, over 43 years, 47 years, something like that. So the Ford F-150 pickup truck has been a dominant pickup truck in America. And it's manufactured in Kansas City and employing 7,500 people. And then the nice thing that's going on is, again, I'm always looking for historic levels of investment and employment. Panasonic is building a new electric vehicle battery plant just west of Kansas City, a $4 billion investment projecting 4,000 employees. Now note that Panasonic is the partner of Tesla. So in my experience and in my research, Teslas have a pretty good battery. So here is Panasonic expanding to continue to sell more batteries to Tesla, but also to sell batteries to other automotive manufacturers. Needless to say, I'm liking the economic fundamentals of Kansas City. As mentioned, I've ordered a home inspection, and the property manager will be providing me a quote to break down that estimated $25,000 worth of renovations in order to optimize my rent returns. When the email came in, I was literally finalizing my presentation that I was about to give in front of 120 mortgage professionals, specifically from Dominion Lending Center, mortgage agents and brokers, and corporate. So folks from DLC Canada were there as well. My mortgage broker, Scott Dillingham, who is a DLC broker of Lend City out of Windsor, Ontario. He's the guy that can get me both US and Canadian mortgages. And then he announced on stage there to all the attendees that Scott can do, Lend City can do US mortgages for all of Dominion Lending Center's 2,800 mortgage professionals. So This is big news for all those mortgage professionals. There's lots of interest in the States. I don't think you need to go far to find someone interested in buying something in the States. The feedback was overwhelmingly positive after my talk and doing and at the trade show and what they call the speed networking, which is kind of like speed dating. It didn't hurt that the two chief economists who spoke at the same conference had many positive things to say about the U.S. economy. Uh, yeah, but and pardon the geek speak, but it was I was quite happy. Two of my favorite economists were speaking at the same event, Dr. Sherry Cooper and Dr. and Benjamin Tall. I've been following both of them for over a decade as they're both sharing, they're great at communicating, and they're very insightful and also accurate. Benjamin Tall, deputy chief economist for CIBC, mentioned how the housing crisis we are in is quite bad, and if left to continue, we could see some civil unrest, which would include anti-immigration and renter strikes. I'd argue we're already seeing both already. Just it's not making the news as much as it should be. Ben also mentioned that we are in a recession in terms of real GDP per capita, which means inflation adjusted economic metrics adjusted per person, per 100,000 people, but basically per person. When this happens, expect the quality of life to decline, which we are seeing right now. We've all been experiencing it. Our healthcare and education is suffering. All this while the US economy is chugging along. Jerome Powell, chairman of the US Federal Reserve, has revised downward the number of rate cuts in 2004. A few months ago, he said there would be 3 rate cuts this year. Now they're revising it down to 1. Most economists are predicting 4 rate cuts for Canada in 2024. So again, a tale of two different economies. One is roaring, the other is us in the recession. Both Ben Tal and Dr. Sherry Cooper predict the Bank of Canada's overnight rate to fall a total of 200 basis points down to 3%, as in like the Bank of Canada's overnight lending rate will fall to 3% by the end of 2025, and a steady increase in prices for detached real estate. Condos, not so much. Ben Tal actually specifically said it's a good time to buy a condo over the next year, year and a half. Apologies to the condo holders. For this reason, I don't feel so bad about holding my several properties I still have from our portfolio. Most of them are in Hamilton and they're all detached houses. I fully anticipate appreciation here, largely due to our inability to get anything developed and historic amounts of immigration. Our country continues to allow in 500,000 new immigrants per year. I don't expect my portfolio to cash flow well because it just won't, and it's only going to get worse because inflation is so bad. I literally just got a note from my bank saying that we need to increase the replacement value on our insurance policies by by over 60%. So that's only going to increase my insurance rates on my income properties, and it's not like I can simply pass that on to the tenants to pay for. Not a happy camper, and I'm grateful to have sold off as many properties as I already have this year. I also don't know why immigrants continue to come here. Again, I am a bit ignorant. I haven't traveled that much outside this country. Uh, I need to make that visit to India. I did ask Dr. Sherry Cooper, chief economist for DLC, if there was still demand for those 500,000 new immigrants to come each year. Are they still coming? Because if you've looked on Reddit, and you just search "move to Canada" and you read the comments on all the posts, it's overwhelmingly negative. Again, I asked Dr. Sherry what she thought about demand, or is there still demand for immigrants to come here? She said yes, plenty of demand. So at the same time, owning a home in Canada is the most unaffordable it's ever been. At the same time, Canadians are leaving our US to the USA at an all-time high, a 70% increase from over a decade ago, exactly 126,340 in 2022. So that's a small number compared to the number of immigrants coming in, but that number is rising. And also consider who those people are. Generally, some of our finest Canadians, a lot of doctors, a lot of successful entrepreneurs, business owners, people who employ people who pay taxes. I have a feeling that number will continue to trend upwards, especially investment dollars. Personally, I have never been so busy fielding calls from Canadians to invest in real estate, but they're asking about share. My partners for investing in the USA, they're not looking to invest locally. If you too would like more information on investing in the USA, I've written a free guide to USA investing for Canadians. You can download it at truthaboutrealestateinvesting.ca. It's on the right side. Just give your name and email address. It's free. Otherwise, once you have the report, you can check out our current and past deals available for direct investment on the share website. And you can pick up our report on the best places to invest in the USA in 2024. The crazy thing about the States is every time I look somewhere else, I see more historic levels of investment. I did not know about that new Panasonic plant that was being built in Kansas City until last week, which is crazy because the Panasonic plant in Nevada, in partnership with Tesla, they're investing $3.6 billion already to expand its capacity. It's hard to track how much investment is going on in the States to create historic levels of high-paying manufacturing jobs. Anyways, on to this week's show. We have a special guest today who squeezed in time for me for this show before she returns home to Tampa Bay, Florida, to warm weather, pickleball year-round, fruit trees in her backyard. It sounds pretty nice. The reasons are obvious why Canadians love Florida. Carmen De Silva is a Canadian who lives in Florida. She's Canadian. She's also a chartered professional accountant, tax specialist in both Canada and the USA. She better be because she's Canadian, but she owns 70 income properties in the USA, all houses, single family home. Her 24-year-old son even owns 3 rental houses in the States too. None of them he doesn't live in any of them. They're all rental properties. 24 years old, 3 properties. Carmen got into investing after selling her business, and then before the housing crash, and then during the housing crash, she saw opportunity, the housing crash of 2008, and bought a portfolio of single-family homes in Florida to generate cash flow to replace part of her income. Carmen is a passive investor, as Share's property management team takes care of everything, so she gets to enjoy her early retirement income. Carmen is a practicing accountant. She prepares tax returns for Canadian clients, and she's been introducing clients to invest in the U.S., specifically single-family homes, for quite some time. She has dozens of clients, including Andrew Kim, CEO of Share, who's been a past guest of this show several times. We've been hanging out a lot lately because he knows how to make money. Anyways, I like people who know how to make money. Together, Carmen and Andrew, they knew how difficult what the process was, from legal setup to ongoing property management for Canadians to invest in the States. But the returns are life-changing, hence they knew they had to create Share. They had to overlay technology on top of a real estate business that was largely analog. Now they're basically going digital to make it as easy as possible for anyone to become a USA landlord without all the hard work. I invited Carmen to come back on the show to focus on the most common questions that we get at Share, that I get, that Sherry gets, and that is about how to create U.S. entities in the States, legal tax structure, and what are your tax implications. The answer is different for everyone, but Carmen takes the time to explain a couple of different scenarios on this show. A friendly disclaimer: I, Erwin Cito, am not an accountant. I married one. Carmen De Silva is an accountant, but she's not your personal accountant, so you still need to seek your own professional expert advice for your specific situation. Our conversation is for educational purposes, and this is tax. This is complicated stuff. We're adding cross-border tax. Now you're talking about a multinational investment business. It's not the easiest subject for people like me and everyday people. It's easy for the professionals. So leave this conversation to the professionals. Have a conversation with your professional. With that said, please enjoy the show. Hi, Carmen. What's keeping you busy these days?
Oh, well, CFO of Share and tax season right now, right? June 15th is our deadlines, and so there's lots going on. What are we at? First week of June. So that's keeping me busy at the office.
Okay.
At home, I'm loving my pickleball early in the morning. Start my days there. Now moving to outdoor for the first time. Good weather. Yeah, enjoying it.
Very nice.
Yeah.
I'm surprised you have a sizable real estate portfolio. You didn't mention it taking your time.
Taking my time on the portfolio side?
Yeah, I don't know. You ask any Ontario investor with a 70-unit portfolio, they'd be pulling their hair out. In this market, especially. Yeah.
Well, and that's what we're here to talk about. How do you start to not only build a portfolio, but I'm not the ease of not only getting into the portfolio, but then the maintenance of it. Yeah. And how do you do it where you can still travel, which I love to do, well, not be on top of it. You've got an asset manager that's on top of the portfolio managers, even, right? I used to think property management was enough, but maybe as we talk today, let's go through what's the difference between an asset manager and even a property manager, and the differences it made to my portfolio.
Okay, before we get to that, let's let the listener know. So everyone, like I always introduce you as, you're a CPA on both sides of the border. You're
Yes.
Canadian, but you've been living in the States since like 2008.
2003.
2003.
Yeah, I started buying in 2008.
Okay, so
Yeah.
so do you identify as an American?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Don't know if I ever. I'll always identify myself as a Canadian.
Right. But how do you split time between here being in Canada and being in the
lately,
States?
lately, more and more feeling retired, and so I don't even say U.S. and Canada. Soon it'll be Europe too. Like I'm looking at even purchasing something where we can be 3-4 months there. So for me, I just like the change, and I love the weather. So I'm still feeling more like a snowbird. Love summers here. Love winters there.
Winters in Florida.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
And do you still have a significant portfolio in Florida?
Downsized quite a bit, not on purpose, but for diversification was the first thing. But today, getting slowly out of a lot of the properties there. I still have a few condos, few single families, yeah, in the St. Pete's area.
Yeah, someone sent me a news video. It was a local news reporter, and he was in Fort Myers.
Right, which is not far from where I am.
And he was talking about this condo. It looked like houses though, but they're condominium.
Yeah, 2 stories of condo there.
Right. And the homeowners were saying like insurance, their condo fees have gone up like 30%. They just got a special assessment of like $2,500. And there's just tons of them for sale now.
And that's for me, when I first started, to give you a little history on how I even got involved in real estate. I'm like you said, CPA, but I actually built wealth management centers across Canada, so your single family offices. And that's because my specialty was tax and estate planning, so joining up with your top investment brokers it was an opportunity to take that across Canada. So when I moved to Florida, it was more for lifestyle. I had young children, wanted to spend more time with the family, and at that time, nationally, we were already building with webcams and all of that, so able to work from Florida with the same group of clients. And I thought it was temporary, but the moment it became more permanent, then it was time to sell the business because I was in stocks, but you can't keep that license going, being away so long. So when we sold, that I say I'm lucky, the opportunity was there. We had the funds. The crash of 2008 kind of brought the opportunity to take that money and replace my income, because when you're managing a large portfolio, you've got what we call trailers. So you've got a monthly income by just managing the investments for clients besides getting new clients in. So to replace that form of income, I could have done stocks, things I knew, but somehow I got introduced to real estate, and it was at the bottom of the market, so the opportunity was there, and we bought 25 properties all at once, and that was all in Florida. So no diversification, no thought of that, but good cash flow. And so the idea of entering this, the marketplace even, you never heard of buying a property at $100,000. Not coming from Toronto anyways. So I go from Toronto to Sarasota and hearing Florida properties at this $80,000 to $100,000 bracket. It was just almost like a no-brainer. You've got enough properties, the diversification was there. You lose one tenant, I still had many. And then the agent that I was working with, he was a real estate agent, but he also had built a property management firm. So I had both on both sides. Eventually, he brought me more into the Niagara Falls, New York area. And so that's where we expanded to. But I've always bought portfolios at a time. Not sure why, but that seems to be maybe the price too.
Well, you're investing with bigger dollars as well.
Well, and it's also the price, because when you're buying in bulk, you're getting discounts, right? And so I remember a batch that we bought just as COVID hit. There are people from, I think it was Egypt. They didn't know if they'd be able to come back to see their properties. So they had a portfolio, they bought that one. Second portfolio, bought that one. You know what I mean? So it was easier to work like that. So for me, that's the way I've bought. But then, so with this broker, I'm one of those that I can't sit still. So although we thought we were retired, having that income stream, it was just so easy to talk about it to friends and family, eventually clients again. So by about 2012, did set up a company that was full service, so that end-to-end or turnkey is what we called it at the time. And did a lot of that, but not to the level that we are at Share. So what Share introduced for me, and that was the idea of getting involved and being co-founder in this business, is the ability to scale it. So with technology came operational efficiencies, I'll call it, and the ability to, I guess, for the first time, diversify all over America. Because before that concentration had to be there because I had to be with a property manager that had contract workers in their local areas. Today, because we've got, I say institutional grade, so higher service levels and yet lower costs, because we've been able to contract. So we've got, the acquisition contracts, we've got the construction, and then the leasing. So from end to end, having those institutional service providers has helped diversify anywhere I want in America. And that's a big deal. To me, that's a big deal because for me, when I was even managing stocks, bonds, mutual funds, diversification was part of risk management, right? So to be able to do that, it also, I guess, because many people always said to me, if you're buying like that, why not multi-families? And some part of me likes the idea of the single family if it's operationally efficient, because I don't have to sell the whole building. So liquidation's easier, diversification geographically as well as in marketplaces, various marketplaces, even if it's in the same state, so that's what brought me to where I am today. So a few years ago when we started Share, as I said, scaling is easier, operationally more efficient, and a lot of the accounting, and because we're asset managers, a lot of the accounting is done at a higher level. So what we're seeing happening is not just individuals wanting to purchase through Share, but even seasoned investors that might have portfolios wanting to come to Share to be their asset manager, right? Because I remember someone in Arkansas talking to me and they had 40 properties, but various property managers.
Ooh.
So then they have to be the manager of these various property managers. Moving to us, we put all of that under one umbrella. And so you've got this dashboard that's seeing everything all in one place. Makes a difference.
Right. And if you value your time, that's what you would do.
Not just, value your time, but how does everyone understand accounting? How does everyone understand? So some part of it's done for you, and you're looking at a different level. If you had all your KPIs all in one place, and you knew those are the key indicators to look for, that'd be helpful. But if you're the one doing it, you don't even know that should be what you're looking at. Right? So sometimes having someone else put the package together for you and you're looking at certain indicators, and that's what asset managers do. We're not there to just stay on top of property managers, but to look at what are the indicators, what are the delinquency rates or occupancy rates, and how are we doing on rents, and should we be putting in enough repairs to get a higher rental. I never looked at any of that before. I just left it all to the property manager. So that difference has increased the income on the portfolio and reduced expenses, which means a higher cash flow for the bottom line, right?
Yeah, people need to appreciate, like, the property manager, their job is just day to day, not to strategize, not to optimize.
That's it. I mean, they will increase rents here and there, but if our eyes are on the ball and seeing what the market rents are and negotiating with them, is this possible, is that possible? Yeah, like you're right. It's just, as tenants are leaving or delinquent, that's when they get involved. But to what extent are they putting a strategy together?
They may not be the ones that tell you when to acquire more property or when to divest property.
Oh, definitely not that.
Let alone refinance.
Yes, at a property level.
It's not their job.
Yeah, that's not their job. Yeah.
That's fascinating stuff. Now, what are the common questions that people have for you? Because again, like, you come from a very special skill set and experience. There's not many people around like you who've been working with clients, especially specifically Canadian clients buying in the U.S. And again, you being a CPA on both sides of the border, and you own a 70 property portfolio yourself.
Well, I think the key in the service level or questions that get asked from me is more, I would say, integration. Like, it's how do you start to look at the properties, and I'll go holistically, if you will. But I say really there's three considerations. And in my field, and what people are asking when you say what are the most frequently asked questions, the first one is going to be your asset protection. Because remember, once we get into real estate that is rentals, we've got to start protecting the asset if something happens.
Yeah.
If it's a vacation home, my first home, living there, no problem having your own name. But
just take a step back. Because most Canadians believe the Americans to be very litigious. They tend to sue each other a lot.
Even if it's Canada, you got to
in general, we should protect ourselves.
Yes, once you have other people living in your property, there should be some form of protection. And so with that, I always say, own nothing, but earn everything.
Yeah.
So that concept has to be there from an asset protection perspective.
Which is actually absolutely key in almost every rich person I know.
Exactly. We were doing this even without real estate, right? So structurally, that's a consideration, is what I'm saying. Okay. The second consideration is going to be taxation. I put it as second because taxation shouldn't be your first consideration. Hopefully you're making good money, that tax should be an issue, and there's ways of structuring to avoid tax or defer tax or divide between family members to reduce tax. So sure, we're going to be strategic in our tax planning.
I would just say about the taxes that I find most people already know the opportunities better. So they've already asked many questions. Now they're just down to tax.
Okay. Okay. And that's the thing. That's what I'm saying. Investments first.
Yeah.
If it's a good investment, then what are the tax considerations?
Yeah.
Okay.
I find that's where most people are. They're already
That's
at.
great.
They already
That's great.
because they wouldn't be talking to us otherwise if they weren't interested in the States.
Okay, and real estate to begin with.
Yeah, real estate,
So that's the first step is real estate, where you're going to build your wealth, and then secondly, like you said, it's not even just which country, even which state. So understanding where that buy box is and what your intentions are going to be critical, because in taxation, the biggest thing to consider is what's the objective. And that's not just in tax, that's even in investment, right? Because your first consideration when you're investing is what's the goal? Is it a portfolio you're going for? Is it you just want to whet your appetite with one? Is it cash flow that's king? Or is it appreciation? And so we talk about even asset classes, right? Your C class that tend to be lower entry but higher cash flow. Okay, and then you've got your A class, which is higher entry but more appreciation. Sometimes you're even breaking even or very lower cash flow. So what's the objective of the portfolio?
Right.
And I don't mean just for today, but for the long term. Right? Once the objectives are met, then you can start thinking, how should I set up my entities for today and for growth? Okay.
I'm finding most people, especially with rates being so high, I'm finding most Canadians are looking at C-class properties, so they're really gunning for that. I find
lower entry
point, higher yield. So I think about 60% of our clients are in that space, and then
also
and then the
if
rest
you're
are
trying it out for the first time,
Yeah.
you're thinking, okay, at least let's dabble with that type of money, right? And so if it works, we can get more. And sometimes people are thinking maybe more is better in the sense that if you lose one renter, you still have one in another. So with the same money, should you buy two rather than one? So those are considerations. Having said that, you have a specific question for that type of class? Is that what you're saying?
Sure, because that's where almost all of our listeners are and our clients are, is like first, they're just thinking about the first three properties.
Okay.
I've almost had no discussions with anyone who's interested in just buying one.
Okay. So the first point you're making is it is more than one, and so then the next
Not one person has said they only want 2 property. They want to build a portfolio.
And so if it's a portfolio, your next consideration is concentration or diversification. Right? Because if we're going to concentrate those 3 properties, let's go there as an example, and we say, you know what, let's concentrate in Georgia, or let's concentrate in Texas or Tennessee or Ohio, wherever those various states that you want to concentrate in. That's one philosophy in one way, and I'll go through the tax ramifications of staying in one state, or are we spreading them? I want 3, but let's do 1 Georgia, 1 Texas, and 1 Tennessee. And so understanding where we want to go, and so residency matters in tax. Okay, so I talk about residency from 2 aspects. One is we are residents of Canada investing in a property that might be resident in various states. Okay, so that cross-border residency is the first consideration. And I hope all your listeners know that if you're Canadian, you're paying on a worldwide income for tax purposes. Okay, but every state that you own in, and even every province that you own in, they want their own taxes for the income you've earned in their province or their state. Right? So what you've got to consider is how do you set up your structure to invest in various states, knowing there's tax considerations for each state. Okay, so we do have, in America, there's about 8 tax-free states. And so even though there's no tax in the state, there's still a federal tax. Okay, so every state will want your entity. So let's go back to asset protection. Asset protection says put an entity between you and the property. Okay, so now that you have this entity, the government of the state is going to want you to be able to do business in their state. You've got to register to do business in their state. Okay, so the entity that you create needs to what we call either register in a foreign state, so it's foreign registration. Okay, so structurally you might say, you know what, I have this entity that I've created, and let me go foreign register it in all the various states I want to buy. The 3 states, Tennessee, let's say Texas, and Georgia. Okay, that's one consideration. The other consideration might be to have what I call like a holding entity, and underneath it are various entities that are in the various states. Okay, and they will hold all of Florida will go under this entity. So again, a parent-sub relationship. Also, it's a nice way for accounting, and it's a great way of filing even for, as I said, this foreign registration or foreign portfolios in each state. So each state is foreign to the main entity, let's call it. Okay, so structurally, that's the things you have to think of. Are you going to concentrate? Are you going to diversify as we go into the states?
I think most will start maybe 1-2 states, and then they'll go from there. Because I think the argument, because share is national.
Yes, it's tempting to diversify, and why not?
Well, it makes a lot of sense. Like, we all know what happened to like Michigan, for example, when the U.S. automotive suffered greatly during the Great Financial Crisis.
Well, you don't know what changes can happen.
Never know.
Any state that's concentrated in one area, oil and gas, something happens in that industry, all of a sudden,
Yeah.
And so yes, you do want to look at the markets, but you also want to be able to diversify for those reasons.
Yeah. So I have, for example, I have like 5 cities on my list.
Right.
And that's I think it's 4 states.
Yeah.
That's at least 3 states.
So let's go back a little step back to understanding the types of entities then, right? Because I think you talk structure, and that's the main question. That's the main question I'm going to get, right? Is which structure should I hold it in? So if I'm going to say there has to be a structure between you and your property, there's really only 2 structures for Canada, US. Okay, and I say that because first we have to choose an entity that will, if we're going to grow, be valid in all our provinces and all our states. Why do I say that? What if I move from Ontario to Alberta? Does this structure still stand? Right? If I want to buy in the various states, will the structure still hold? Right? So if I'm not going to own an individual name, the only 2 structures available is your limited partnership or corporation. Okay. There is a third in America called a limited liability corporation, but because we don't have it here in Canada, I'm just keeping that out for a moment, okay, in conversation. So limited partnership versus corporation, which is the better one of the 2? Okay, and some of that's changed over time. The Canadian budget has made us rethink a lot of ways of structuring our portfolio and how we hold them. Let's just go to the budget that just came out this year, right? So now all of a sudden, as an individual, I'm in a different tax bracket for capital gains. Not tax bracket, inclusion rate has changed, right? So what's happened is as an individual, only 50% of my capital gains is included in my tax return, whereas corporately, from the first dollar, 66% is now included in your tax return, right? Having said that, if capital gains or appreciation or flipping or turnover or even in the estate is an issue, then maybe that corporate structure may not be the best solution. Okay, compliance-wise too, and what's compliance? Compliance is a little different than tax. It's just reporting information. A lot of the countries, both sides of the border, are requiring individuals to let the government know everything I own on both sides of the border. As soon as I own over 100,000, I start getting to these issues, right? So if we want,
it's pretty easy to own over 100,000.
Exactly. But that compliance is there and required. So if I'm in, so now the big consideration from a tax perspective, are we investing as a passive investor or as an active business?
Right.
Because that's a huge consideration, right? Because if I'm in an
about 90% of the conversations I have are about passive.
Yeah. Right, and that's.
And then the other 10% are like, I want to be active. I want to move to the States. So let's worry about the 90.
Exactly.
Let's worry about the passive 90.
That 10%, when it's active business, I say corporate route is the best way to go because you've got lower rates. You can keep your money there. You don't have to repatriate till you're giving yourself a dividend, And even then, we've got a Canadian tax system that you can follow through, so you don't have what we call a double tax by having a corporation in the US. Okay? But the moment we say passive, it's a whole different tax law, right? Even Canada doesn't like you holding your money after tax in corporate environments. So they've got this idea that push out the money. It's a refundable dividend tax system. They say you'll get your money back when you pay yourself a dividend. So having said that, they've kind of introduced that concept through the US-Canada taxation system too. And so even though you don't want to pull your money to Canada and you want to invest in the US, you have to accrue for that income in Canada through what we call foreign accrual property income, FAPI, right? So to avoid those rules, we've gone out of the corporate concept into the limited partnership world. Why am I saying that? I'd rather be taxed as an individual for the better capital gains rates, as well as avoiding all these foreign accrual property income for controlled affiliate corporations, right? So what does a limited partnership look like? Okay, so limited partnerships have two parties in it. Even if you're a single person, they've got the limited partner and they've got a general partner. Okay, the limited partner, the liability is limited to the amount of capital that's invested, right? So if I only put 80,000 into that real estate asset, that's all someone can come after me for, right?
Wait. So that's infinitely better than what we do in Canada.
As a limited partnership? No, limited partnerships are going to be the same. That's the idea of limited partnership.
I know, but if I get a mortgage in the States, even and through a corporation, I generally have to personally qualify. So
that's different.
I'm on the hook.
That's personal qualifications as to what they can come after you. I'm going with liability. Someone, a renter falls and they want to sue you for a couple of million, or well above the property value, and they want to come after your home here in Canada.
But I'm hoping that because it doesn't snow where I'm investing, there should be less chance of slip and fall. Am I wrong?
I don't know what other things can happen, so I'm not going to go as to what can happen, but to protect yourself.
For like, I know when I tell you about U.S. Canadian investing, it's so different here because that's a common issue here in Canada. It's like, because if your snow isn't removed in time, you have potential liability, right, of slip and fall.
And that's the idea of the entities, protecting you against those liabilities.
Right. But again, you don't generally have snow in the southern states.
But the other things. Now, I personally have not experienced it with any of my clients or myself that something catastrophic has happened, that they've gone beyond any insurance on the house values or any of that. But that's the idea of protecting yourself. But what I wanted to bring up with the limited partnership, though, is the general partner who's supposed to be managing that property. That one has unlimited liability. Right, and so usually we'll split it up 1% for the general partner and 99% for the limited partners, which tend to be the individual owner or the couple that's owning that property. Okay, and so because of this unlimited liability of a general partner, we tend to put an entity on top of that. Okay, to protect that general partner, and so that's basic structure for the limited partnership. 2 or 1 limited partner, individuals, and 1 corporate partner, which becomes your general partner. Okay, and that at least has that asset protection covered.
I can't wait till we whiteboard this for YouTube.
There you go. Yeah, because that's it. And just having that little part, we could have done it here. But anyways, so understanding the visual diagram of it's important. But that's the limited partnership route. Okay, if we're going that route, sometimes with the general partner, you may want to have the Canadian parent own that U.S. subsidiary if you want, because if you want to flow the income through the Canadian tax route, we do have an integrated tax system. So at least when you pay yourself a dividend out of that portion, you will get a credit back. Okay, but that's only 1%. So let's focus on the 99% because that's probably more critical. So the 99% goes out to the individual then, right? So the individual will get the capital gains rate that the individuals get. So both America and Canada have better rates for capital gains tax personally than they do corporately. Okay, so a U.S. corporation is a flat rate of 21%. Doesn't matter that it's capital gains or income. Whereas personally, you got from 0, 10 to 15. They've got various rates for long-term and short-term capital gains. Okay, Canada, we just talked about that. Personally, 50% is taxable up to that $250,000 a year. So there's a lot of planning opportunities to stay within that threshold. Okay, so owning assets for the capital gains, better personally. Okay, so now let's go into the rental income side, because for many years maybe that's the cash flow is coming from rental income more than capital gains, because you're not flipping, you're buying and holding. At least if you're building a portfolio for that for the future income.
No one I'm speaking to is interested in doing that because, again, they're coming to us because they want something more passive.
Passive and to build a portfolio, right? And not flipping is what you're saying. Yeah.
It's just too hard. Remotely flipping, it's possible, but that's a full-time gig.
Yeah.
And you have to be ready, prepared. You have to have deep pockets ready for losses as
well. And that's the thing. When you're into, like, I'm seeing a few people that have corporate entities with subsidiaries under them, but they're either going for, like you're saying, EB5 or wanting to live there, or they want to be active in it, or they've got other partners who want to get involved. That's a full-time, like you said, that's full-time.
Yeah. And I've done a previous episodes with people with Chad and like Glenn Sutherland. So folks, if you want to do these full-time things, we have past guests.
Right.
We're talking about boring here.
Right. And that's
and not losing your shirt.
Yeah. How do you give it to someone else to manage for you, and you're not in it for the active business side of it.
Right. Now, why? You never talked about investing in Canada, even though you're Canadian. Why not?
You know what? The only investment I've had in Canada was, I'm just trying to think of when you graduated from university and got my first job.
Yeah.
And again, I'm from a family of finances, right? So my parents, my dad was in finance and actually joined his business when I left Price Waterhouse and started on my own. So we always were taught to put 10% away. I don't know if you remember. I mean, those days it was wealthy barber, put away 10% for the future. So after you start to do that and you get your first real job, you start to put into RSPs, then what? Tried to finance a project. Banks aren't willing to give you that, at least then, when you just your first job, right? So I didn't even know what I was going to do with this extra money. So we decided to buy a property. That was way up in North Bay, and that was with one of my cousins. So
where were you living at the time?
Toronto, 55 years in the same house, bought my parents' home, so we're always here. I'm not sure what
North
we
Bay's
thought.
Far.
Not only
I don't
far.
know how you found it.
I think at the time.
I don't know how you found your way there.
This
is before internet and Google Maps.
The idea was, I think, like all of us, we were thinking transient people. Marketplace was more military. I don't know, that's what we researched at the time. And so we thought, oh, great for rentals. I have no idea when I think, that far back as to exactly the reason for North Bay. But maintaining it was, like you said, a headache to have to go there every time there's a turnover and do anything. And of course, at that young age, you think you're going to be the one doing all of that. So we kind of did shared duties and went up there and did all kinds of whatever had to get done in between. I did have a second stint in Canada. It was almost like a motel, if you will. It was many units. But because it's so cash driven, it was really hard unless you could trust managers, in your way. So that was, we quickly moved on to other things. And so never did anything in Canada since. But I'm not going to say intentional, so I don't have a flavor for the Canadian market, to be honest with you. Only since arriving back and being introduced to all the laws of Canada and the landlords and everything I'm hearing, it seems almost like a nightmare to be here and have a tenant to evict and that's
not being able to evict them.
Not being able to evict them.
Let
or
alone collect.
Even the idea that you have to pay someone to leave. And I just thought those are other countries that I have heard of it, just never thought it was here.
Right.
So I've just not had that experience because, as I said, my getting into real estate that first time, it's almost by accident. It wasn't my intention. But when the markets had dropped and the opportunity was there, got into it, so just never had the opportunity or thought of real estate as a portfolio. I was in a different business model, right? Having said that, my kids have only seen us do that because when we started, I think I've got now some young adults, 3 children, and they were toddlers at the time. And so when I look at what they've seen, they've only seen us in real estate. They haven't seen us as active investment advisors. Right. So having said that, my children all have their own properties. They're constantly buying, and they're still in their 20s. But as an example, my son, his first internship, bought his first entry level. They're not the high end; they are the C class, but they give them good cash flow. Second year he did it with his roommate, bought a fractional between the two of them. This third year, this January, he bought another property. So that's how they're building. And so the cash flow from that. Like we did, we had a lot of cash flow assets, and I think it was 2 years ago, and this is where share came in. I mean, the expansion of my portfolio happened a lot faster with share than it ever did with me alone, right? Because when I bought, I was just buying and holding and really never did anything else. When there's extra money from all that cash flow, we'd buy more. I tried refinancing, not to say that we didn't, but it was tough to refinance at the time. The first time around is because I bought, remember when I bought too, right? I bought when the crash.
Financial crisis, yeah.
Yes, and so no one was lending anyone.
It's also called the credit crisis.
It wasn't even foreign nationals a consideration. Even local people couldn't get, right? So then by 2015 or so, we started to talk a little more about, foreign nationals getting loans. But even then, it's like one loan here, one off there. It was never on the portfolio. Today, we're doing portfolio loans just so easily, right? So it's a different environment. Mm-hmm. And so I think it was 2019 we bought a portfolio. By 2022, we already refinanced that. And the cash flow from that portfolio, because they were C-class high cash flow, really helped us finance some A-class properties that we bought in Texas. No money down. We had to put nothing down, but the
portfolio was able to afford it.
Yeah. The assets we had plus the two new assets was all full collateral, enough income that they were okay with that. So it's called the DSCR loan. Went that route. So have experienced all of that now, and as I said, expanded the portfolio a lot faster because of these kind of ideas. Right, so financing is key, and I always say
it's infinitely better than here.
Well, that, and also from a tax planning perspective. I always say if I see too much income coming in, it's time to refinance. That means you've got enough good cash flow to look at using your assets to refinance, buy some more, bring down that tax liability. And so that was the point that we kind of missed a little earlier. When we have rental income, the taxation on that is manageable because in the end, rental properties give us tax breaks, right? So the first thing is we can write off interest, because we borrow with the intentions of profit. Second thing is we've got depreciation. So 80% of the building value around that. Depreciation in Canada and the US is about the same at about 4 or 5%. We can write off every year. All of that, even though we got good cash flow, we may have positive cash flow. But for tax purposes, it could be reduced to zero or nil or negative even because of these deductions that we have. Right? And so really the tax consideration on an annual basis is not as critical as the capital gains at the end, the exit, And that's why we talk about where should we structure our assets. Having that money flow personally is not hugely bad. Mm-hmm. Sometimes some of that deductions we can even use against our employment income or other income that we may have as source today.
So I'm sure people will be interested in like your son's latest property, most recent property. Like what's an entry-level C property? Tell us what it looks like.
Today, I mean, I would still say around that $150,000 mark is still more that C class property. We are buying them all over. I mean, there's availability in the various states. But is that what you're asking? The dollar value of entering?
Yeah, because people are curious.
And actually, now that you said
especially if you're dipping your toe in the water, like this is very digestible for people.
Well, and that's important to understand because I don't think most Canadians, especially, I don't know the audience, for you, but I'll say for myself in Toronto, I know when I first saw that type of property, didn't even know that existed.
I know, because parking spots are $100,000 in Toronto.
Exactly, yeah. So if you don't even know that exists, we used to call it stretching the dollar. Right, because even my nephew, I remember he was buying a condo here for $850.
Yeah.
A two-bedroom condo, and I'm thinking, wow, can we take that, convert it? Even if I only got 500, you can get 5 units, and
5 houses.
5 houses and good cash flow, and you could live wherever you want, even if you're renting, right? And so, it's stretching the dollar, understanding what you can do with the same money is going to be critical.
Yeah,
right?
That's what we're trying to do is just educate folks.
Exactly.
Right. Why would anyone ever buy a condo again for an investment, like a pure investment? You want to live in it? Totally understand it. You want to rent out a room, house hack it, whatever. I understand. But as a pure investment?
Yeah, well, I originally started in condos and realized the pitfalls of condo versus single family, right? First is you have no control of the condo fees versus you putting your own budget aside for your own repairs and maintenance. But also, we had bought 25 units in this condo unit, and I remember a Canadian hedge fund buying shortly after us, but they bought 100 units. And I thought,
so they have all the voting power.
Exactly. I thought, we'll ride their coattails, no problem, being naive. But then you realize how much power they had on
Yeah.
your board,
And they don't
and
wanna
all of a
spend.
sudden, and
They
all of
don't
a
wanna
sudden,
maintain.
everything. No, it was the opposite.
They wanna maintain
They were
everything.
maintaining everything, and so all our condo fees went up and up and up.
Interesting.
So I thought, okay, well, maybe it's okay because obviously they're bringing value to the properties, and we'll sell when they sell, and we'll all get profits. But I remember clearly, I think it was 2012 when the currency started to change. We had all bought at par.
Yeah.
And now Canadian dollar was really good, 2012 to 15, around that time. I
Yeah.
can't remember the exact dates. They just sold out for the currency. They could have sold for the same value they bought at, but the currency was so good. I think it was at 25% at the time. They made enough on a currency. They didn't care about what price they were selling at. So sometimes that's why you have to be careful of so much in concentration in one area in the condo market, because even the banks would lend when you have more than 10% ownership like that, right? Like there's an ownership that has a little more control.
They want to
like
limit their
that.
risk as well.
Exactly. So yeah, that's why I'm enjoying the single family market for ourselves and for our clients.
Right.
It's just a nice way of.
So freehold, as
diversifying.
in there's no condos, no homeowners association.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Let's go back to the $150,000 C-class property. That's American dollars.
American dollars.
What would that rent for roughly?
I mean, if I'm looking at, I'm just trying to think of what his are renting for, because.
Can we just log into his account? Do you have his account? Do you have his login?
You know, I'll be very frank with you. Usually, I'm not even looking at most properties in that class. That's not at least 1% a month.
Right.
So at that 150, I'd say I'd be expecting at least 1,500 a month.
Yeah.
Because that's the expectation, to have at least that 12%. By the time I've, expensed a few dollars here and there, I want to still net the high 8, 9, whatever it is.
Right. And we're talking about single-family home
Single
here.
family homes.
Versus, I think people need to do an apartment building in Canada if they want this kind of 1% rule.
Yeah.
And I don't even know
that
where to find
1% rule, I think, was gone out the door a long time ago here, right? But we were constantly getting that, if not more. Most of those prices, that when we were buying at those prices, I think we were getting more like 20% gross. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And still are in some of those lower entry.
And then when a tenant doesn't pay you rent, do you even know about it?
What does that mean? Do we know about it?
Well, you have your property between you and the property. You have a property manager and you have an asset manager. Do you even find out if a tenant doesn't pay your rent?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, with Share, we're very transparent. So you should know, because not only when you are understanding that property at a property level, you should know the rate of delinquency, because if it's too high delinquency, even in C class, you haven't made that money even if you are going to get that type of rent, right? So it's important to understand your delinquency rates, your occupancy rates, so that you can forecast for the future. So definitely you're going to know, if that's the only question you're asking.
Because many people want to just know what is their day-to-day like, what as a customer Share.
Okay, so more the experience.
Yeah.
What are they experiencing? So basically, the portal, the investor portal, one of the things that I like about the portal is it integrates all the properties, I mean. So from an accounting perspective, everyone needs to understand their properties at a property level, right? Per property, how's it doing in itself? And then you also need to see it as a consolidated. Because overall, how am I doing? Am I meeting my targets? Because I think I remember, even the sessions that we're having here, the targets to have this 10,000 a month. So collectively, am I getting that? Am I close to it? So seeing yourself meet your targets and what you want to do as a portfolio versus single properties and understanding how each one's doing, it's going to be critical, right? And so, so at both levels, you want to be able to see that. And you want it to be seamless, so you don't care that Texas is being managed by this company and Atlanta is managed by another property management company, if that's the case, right? So the seamless view of your portfolio on a monthly basis, annual basis, even longer than that, is what you really want to keep track of and see. Okay. I'll call it the accrual side, meaning, okay, I'm supposed to be leased for this, I didn't get a tenant, or it's late, any of that should also be tracked though. So as I said, you can then analyze a C class for its great rates, but also, is it more delinquent or not? Okay. I do, for myself personally, I do see sometimes a C class not pay on time, but somehow they always pay because sometimes the government's paying for them, right? And so you've got these Section 8s that you've got some kind of housing authority paying for those rents. If they're late, you still know you're going to get it, is what I'm saying. I remember even during COVID, we didn't miss a beat because the government stepped in and paid for everyone. They paid 12 months plus 3 months forward. So on that end of the spectrum, you have the aid of the government in helping some of those rents, and therefore a little more stability. Okay. On the other side of the spectrum, though, I've seen our A-class clients, they are paying on the first of the month every month, and never missing a beat. Right? But
Yeah, so there's
I'm not
different
gonna
risk
get,
profile between
yeah,
those
I'm
as
not
well.
going to get the same return. Yeah.
Great.
You know, on a 300,000 property, I might get around 2,200 on those. I'm not getting that full 1%, is what I'm saying.
Now, for a new investor, how should they go about getting? Like, I imagine most, like, a new investor would have, like, say, a new Canadian investor is interested in going to the States. How do they go about learning how to properly structure their U.S. entities? They need to go seek out an accountant on their own, or if they're with Share, what does Share do for them?
Okay, so from a sheriff's perspective, as you said, because we are actively managing on their behalf, right? We're their asset manager, and then we have the property manager on top. They tend to be, and I say again, I'm going to go with the same rules you are. 80%, you said 90-10. I'll say 80% tend to be passive. Okay, and so we will suggest to them what we think is the best route to go, and even because we've got third-party companies that will help us with the entity creation, and we'll help set that up for them. From an accounting perspective, everything, all distributions and reporting is done through the portal. So monthly, you're seeing that. Okay. At the end of the year,
To emphasize portal, it means they have their own login to the website.
Yes.
They have their own view of their world, which is their portfolio.
Yes, their portfolio at the individual level and as a consolidated.
Yeah.
Okay.
And all their documents are there because I looked at
And all their documents are there. So
Yeah.
as even we start entity creation, documents are there. And then eventually, as the properties get leased, the documents are there. If there's repairs, your invoices are there, right? Because you need everything for your own accounting to back up anything that's expensed or received. Okay. At the end of the year, what then happens is all that income can be then reported to either you're taking it to your accountant to file the return. So everything is there and available because I'll say almost all the bookkeeping's already done for you. Okay. But everything's done at a property level. There's always going to be some expenses that you have that's at an entity level. We don't always have that information. That's you alone have to add that to. So as an example, I'll just use my own properties. I might have 16 properties in one entity. Okay. At a property level, I have all the details. But then at an entity level, I might have a bank account that has fees. I have to take that divided by the 16 as an example.
Right.
Okay. Or I might have borrowed money. Right, I might have borrowed for like this property that I said, well, on 8 of them there was no borrowing, but on the 2 Texas I have borrowing. So when I file my Texas return, I have to know the interest. So anything that's outside at the property level sometimes has to be added by the accountants that you have.
Right.
Yeah, but everything on a property level. So as an example, in America they call it a Schedule E. So everything that says, oh, this is my rent, this is my property tax, my insurance, my repairs and maintenance, all of that's already accounted there for you. Okay.
So that really, an investor can just download the documents that they need for the accountant and just email them off to their accountant.
Exactly. And then once the accountant's filed the U.S. side of the return, Canada is going to use the same information. The Canadian counterpart, whether it's the same accountant or the Canadian tax filers, will use the same information. They'll just convert it to U.S. dollars to Canadian, and they may just change the depreciation rate, because the two countries have different rates, slightly.
Yeah.
And that's pretty well what it is. And then because you've paid taxes in America, and that's why you wait till you filed your American return, you can then get what we call a foreign tax credit back for any taxes you've paid in America. So you're never going to pay double tax.
Right.
Okay. American tax deadline's April 15th, ours is the 30th.
Oh,
so
nice.
There's a little bit of a lag, which is great. So you have one you can use for the other.
Right.
Yeah.
So then, to me, it sounds like at the end of the day, the amount of tax you pay is the same. It's just you have to split between the two governments.
Yes. Yeah.
And I know some
You'll
people
never pay more. And I say that because, unfortunately, worldwide income, Canada's rates is what you're going to follow. Canada does have higher rates than America. All round. So you'll never pay more.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're still Canadian, right? You still pay taxes to Canada too. Because there's a lot of people who don't want to pay tax to Canada anymore.
I know. I think they'd rather be on a boat and pay taxes of no country.
Yeah. There's that too. But.
Yeah. No. I understand.
Now, so many people don't have an American accountant. So what should they do? Does Share have partners or referral partners that they can refer them
Yeah,
to?
I mean, we've got referral partners that can help with in all aspects. So we are end-to-end full service. As I said, from entity creation right to tax return filing, all the way through, we will refer you to accountants if you don't have, entity formation companies if you don't have. So a lot of that we will help with because we've got those relationships.
Fantastic. Any other common questions that people are coming to you with? Because I know you're a really big demand. I know a lot of people ask to get on a call with you.
So we've covered accounting, we've covered structure. Those are the main two.
Yeah.
Because structurally, what should they do? I would say the only other thing is, we are there to help in the building of the portfolio. So, like you said, should you refinance at this time? Some of the tax questions come along that way too. So if we have to pivot or change or add something or change something. So we're there for strategic planning. We're just not there on a day-to-day. So it's always good to have that local accountant that you're filing with and getting your all your answers from, because each person's situation is different. As I said, we're still there on an individual basis to help. And I think we're putting a program together for consultation time, even like that. It's part of the program.
Fantastic. All right. Any final words? Because I know we need to hop onto YouTube to record something similar for YouTube. Any final words of wisdom or anything?
I don't know. I use this phrase my dad always says. There's never a shortage of money. There's always only a shortage of reasons, right? So find that reason, find the why. Share is here to help you with the what and how.
Yeah.
So structurally, we're there to help. Answer any questions, help you build, understand where you're going, help with the buy box, even help with the market that you should be invested in. But in the end, you need to have that passion and desire and want and objective, right? So really follow that path, because I see too many people even today procrastinating because they're thinking, oh, rates are high. But if rates go down, so will property values go up.
Yeah.
So, when's the right time to buy? Now, so get started and move towards that vision or passion that you're looking for.
I'm doing this out of fear.
You do have fear.
Because if anyone knows how broken things are in the world, and the amount of inflation that's coming, and the amount of money the amount of supply of money being created, this is just all a formula for inflation.
Well, you're an economist, so yeah,
I'm not an economist.
No, but you understand more economy than most people,
Yeah.
the macros and micros of the economy. And yeah, everyone's motivated by either fear or greed.
Yeah.
So there you go. You're still motivated.
Yeah, I'm still motivated.
Yeah.
And then I'm motivated because I don't want my kids to go without a home. Right?
Without a home to live in?
Yeah. Right? And that's very common for people in our communities. They don't know how the next generation is supposed to afford a house.
Oh yeah, affordability. Yeah, and unfortunately, I think you're seeing that from a Toronto perspective. And I don't mean just Toronto, big city. You're Vancouver, Toronto, so we are living
Even
in a place.
Calgary, I think, is over $600,000 for a house on average.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. But you can move to outskirts, right? And so because we want to live in these type of areas,
I think North Bay is still probably $380,000, $400,000 for an
Yeah,
average house.
yeah,
So what
yeah.
kind of income do you need to qualify for that?
No, it's true. I mean, the increase in income versus where we've gone in the property values. Yeah.
Versus I can still buy 3-bedroom detached for under $300,000.
I'll be honest with you, though. What I do like is the new generation's thinking is a little different, though. I grew up immigrant family, and we wanted things. We want to make sure that our kids have everything.
Yeah.
Our kids grew up seeing all the things, and so they want experiences. So they don't want those things, which I actually admire and like, right? Because we were sold on what is it called, the white picket fence, and our first goal was to buy a home. But that put you into a trap of a mortgage for the rest of your life and unable to invest.
Yeah.
So I like the new generation's thinking that if invest first, because they don't mind renting. They want to be a little more, I guess, mobile. I don't know what it is.
There's also massive rent control in almost most of Canada.
Okay.
Well, it makes
Maybe
sense.
that's what it is.
Right.
Yeah. But the point I'm making is they're able to think investment first and then the home.
Yeah.
Versus we always thought home first, and so the priorities were twisted a bit, and I think getting that direction from the industry, I'm sure the banks are the ones that encourage those kind of things too, right? Because that's where their money is going
Yes.
into those mortgages. And
Yes, and then people always need to understand that. How do people make money?
yes,
Right?
yes.
The bank, yeah. No one was
Yeah, let's not go there.
Let's not go there. Carmen, thanks so much for doing this.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for watching. If you want to learn how to invest in real estate from scratch, my team teaches beginners how to use the #1 investment strategy that I personally use in a virtual free training class every month. Go to investortraining.ca/YouTube to register for our next class. The link's also in the description as well. I publish at least 2 to 3 videos a week here, so subscribe if you want to keep learning from seasoned investors like myself and my guests. And if you're just starting out, feel free to ask questions and comment below, and I do the best to answer each of those comments and questions myself. Again, if you're ready to learn the nitty-gritty about real estate investing from a professional investor, register for our next virtual class. That's at investortraining.ca/YouTube. Thanks again for watching. See you in the next video.